Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Emperor Naruto refused to help Konoha Harem Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. That was all Sasake felt as Marioleona's fist slammed into his belly, throwing it directly into the door behind him. As soon as Mato had started the fight, she had disappeared from his sight and even with his Sharingan he had not been able to follow her movements before being hit. Now leaning against the door, badly damaged by the impact just happened, Sasake could feel his internal organs upside down and with no way to avoid it he vomited blood, bile and saliva before putting a hand on his chest. Learning medical ninjutsu had not been his idea but Kakashi had determined that Itachi was unable to use any techniques of that category when he betrayed the village, which could have given Sasake an advantage in his fight against his older brother. Thanks to that jutsu and the boost given by the cursed seal to his natural regeneration, Sasake was cured within seconds and yet the pain was still present. After a deep breath, he glared at the woman in the center of the arena. So you're one of that loser's whores, huh? When I'm done with you, you'll regret getting married to a loser like him. Oh really? Asked Marioleona without losing her smirk before looking at the small puddle at his feet, because that mixture of blood, saliva and bile you threw up makes me think that in the end it will be you who will regret it all, even the day you were born. Going through some very quick hand seals, Sasake put a hand to his mouth, fire release, great fireball technique. Marioleona did not move from her spot before igniting her hands and punching the incoming attack, overwhelming Sasake's flames with her own, shocking him. The flames quickly dispersed into the air after devouring his attack yet the last Uchiha felt a strong wave of hot air against his body. Next. So she fights with fire too, thought Sasake before doing different hand seals, water release, wild water wave. Before spitting a large torrent of water against his opponent who, however, did not move until the last and indeed, hit his attack again, evaporating all the water in a single instant. Next. Sasake looked at her with a mixture of shock and anger. He wasn't very adept at using water jutsu, but he was still very strong by village standards, yet this bitch had prevailed against his jutsu using flames of all things. Going in order, the water should prevail against the fire, not lose against it. Oi, if you're not going to move, I'll come to you. Shouted Marioleona before disappearing in a burst of speed. Knowing she was coming, Sasake managed to avoid the punch aimed at his face before attempting to hit her with a knee in the chest, but she grabbed his knee, lifted him with no effort and threw him into the center of the arena, where he landed smoothly before hurling several balls of fire at her. Yet Marioleona destroyed them all with simple fire-cloaked fists. Gritting his teeth in anger, Sasake decided to change his approach before going through several hand seals, lightning release, electromagnetic murder. In releasing a wave of electricity from his hands that destroyed the ground between him and his opponent, however Marioleona continued to grin before punching the incoming attack with a fiery fist, consuming all the electricity with her flames. Standing without a scratch, the Empress looked Sasake straight in the eyes. Next. That woman was quickly making Sasake lose his temper and he felt mocked by her ability to resist all of his attacks. With one hand he drew his Chikudo before cloaking it in a layer of electricity and dashing toward Marioleona to strike her from above. However, she did not attempt to block the blade or avoid the attack altogether. She punched the sword and under Sasake's shocked eyes, the blade broke just above the hilt, falling several meters away from him. His shock allowed Marioleona to kick him in the chest. Sasake managed to block her with both arms, but was thrown across the arena. A decent sword I would say. If it had been one of our special swords I would not have been able to break it, even though I know that you have several blades of remarkable workmanship and resistance in your villages, said Marioleona walking toward him with a grin on her face. And you hit it without even thinking twice. If it had been the Kusanagi sword used by Orochimaru you would no longer have your entire right arm. Thought Sasake while healing his sore arms, while thanks to his Sharingan he saw that on Marioleona's fingers there was a thin red line. His sword had barely marked her skin without even making her bleed. With his patience now exhausted and the thought of losing against her now nagging in his mind, Sasake let himself go to the power of the cursed seal, and in a few moments his body was transformed. Big wings in the shape of hands came out of his back, as his skin took on a grayish tint and his hair lengthened, becoming lighter. "Ooh, now you look like one of those demons we killed during the war," noted Marolona with her fists burning even more. "Are you asking me to kill you, puny Uchiha? You are the one who will die," shouted Sasake before unleashing a giant dragon made of fire from his mouth. The huge attack was a few meters from Marolona before fire enveloped her completely and the flames took the form of two lions' paws, which she used to grab the dragon's head, shut its mouth and then hit it with another fist, destroying it. Sasake didn't even have a chance to react before Marolona appeared in front of him and punched him in the face, breaking his nose. Konoha's ninja was smashed into the arena wall, but his opponent grabbed his throat before throwing him into the air and hit him with a giant lion paw. Upon impact with the ground, the air was knocked out of his lungs and after a few seconds, Sasake staggered to his feet before turning to his opponent. "Damn you!" Accumulating as much chakra as possible, Sasake released another giant fire dragon from his mouth while throwing needles of electricity with his left hand and creating a long electric blade in his right hand with which he attempted to strike his opponent sideways. Marolona grinned even more before leaping up and moving through the air at staggering speed, destroying the fire dragon with one punch, dodging the needles with a quick right swipe, and smashing the electric blade with a second punch before stopping in front of Sasake, storming him with several dozen fiery punches that sent him straight into the door he had entered. Sasake threw up a lot of blood, using the huge door to get up as his head kept spinning. Looking at his opponent still standing in the center of the arena, Sasake gritted his teeth in anger. That whore was ridiculing him in front of everyone. Him, an elite Uchiha. Blinded with anger now, Sasake waited a few seconds to allow the cursed seal to heal his body just enough for him to fight before releasing a giant wave of fire from his mouth that completely covered Marolona's view. The woman prepared to wipe out that attack with her fists, but then in the midst of the roar of those flames she heard another sound, like a flock of 1,000 birds, and in an instant Sasake leapt out of those flames with his right hand wrapped in black electricity, Chidori. Marolona watched with interest that attack before moving faster than Sasake and grabbing his right wrist before forcing him to point it behind him and push his arm in that direction, causing him to hit his right wing, which was severed almost entirely. Sasake screamed in pain before the flames of his own attack cauterized the wound, causing him to scream even more, and Marolona took the opportunity to quickly hit him in the face with more punches, causing him to spit teeth and blood. When Sasake started to fall to the ground, Marolona prevented him from falling by holding him by the right wrist. "Are you done with your pretty tricks, puny Uchiha?" Sasake could only glare at her without being able to move his body. "In that case, let's end this." Without any effort, Marolona hurled Sasake into the air before being engulfed in a large amount of flames. Mana Zone. Calidus Brachium Barrage. A storm of fiery blows fell on Sasake, who remained suspended in midair in the midst of those continuous explosions of flames. His skin was slowly burned away, his wings soon turned to ash, and his screams were lost amid the clamor of the audience and the explosions around him. The beating went on for over a minute before Marolona stopped, letting Sasake fall to the ground, whose body was covered in horrific burns and even part of his hair was lost in that attack. It was a miracle that his Sharingan was still up and running. The winner of the match. The fourth Empress. Marolona Vermilion. The stadium shook in the rain of cheers, shouts of victory and compliments to the Empress as Sasake stood helpless in the center of the arena. After greeting her subjects, Marolona jumped up to the Emperor's grandstand and looked at her husband with a grin. "Like the show, dear?" "Very much," nodded Naruto with a smile while his daughter tried to reach her mother and Marolona leaned down to take her in her arms, giving her a kiss on the cheek. After greeting her fellow empresses as well, the woman went to sit in her seat while Naruto looked into the arena, where Sasake had just stood up, and their gazes met. The Emperor didn't hold back from showing his former teammate a grin that seemed to mean, I won. Something snapped in Sasuke's mind, who no longer heard anything around him, nor saw anything but Naruto's face and that victorious grin. The loser was grinning at him, as if he, an elite Uchiha, were just a bug. Him, who was just a damned orphan and who had never been able to do anything. Drawing on the last reserves of chakra within himself, Sasuke instantly created a Chidori in his right hand before jumping at Naruto with a battle cry. His target, Naruto's heart. You will die by my hand. Your empire will be mine. Only I can have it. In all of this, as the crowd screamed in anger and shock at the possible imminent assassination of their emperor, Naruto never lost his grin, and with a single movement of his right arm, he created a giant hand of red chakra that grabbed Sasuke on the fly before breaking both of his arms and then throwing him underneath. While Naruto said nothing, Artoria stood up with angry eyes and her voice echoed throughout the arena, that mongrel tried to assassinate the emperor. Arrest him along with all the ninja of Konoha. Sasuke didn't even see the dozen knights arrive who handcuffed him before hitting him to knock him unconscious, and in the room allotted to him and the others, Jiraiya could only watch helplessly as their possibility of having an alliance with the Empire faded from before his eyes. Jiraiya of the Sannin. Looking behind him, the white-haired man saw Lancelot along with many other warriors, all with unsheathed weapons. By order of the Empress, I am placing you under arrest. Do not resist or we will be allowed to use force. Jiraiya could only nod while thinking, Tsunade is going to kill me. My head, what the hell happened? Sakura asked, looking around to see only the walls of a cell and a door made of metal bars, thanks to a single torch hanging on the wall outside the cell. All she remembered was being busy healing Kakashi's wounds before she was hit in the back of the head by something and then, just darkness. Your precious Uchiha happened, replied Jiraiya from another cell, staring at the wall in front of him. Jiraiya-sama. Neji was in the cell in front of him. What happened? Sasuke had to face the fourth empress in the last match. He lost pretty badly and eventually had the brilliant idea of attempting to assassinate Naruto in front of the entire arena. Needless to say, he was stopped right away, and thanks to him we were all arrested. What? How dare Naruto get us arrested? Does he know who we are? And what happened to Sasuke? Will you shut up, you fucking fangirl? Shouted Tenten from her own cell. Sasuke this, Sasuke that. You're pissing me off just by saying his name. Wah, how dare you talk to me like that? Enough. Both of you. Jiraiya shouted at the top of his lungs, forcing them to shut up. We're lucky Naruto didn't have us all executed. Sasuke made the biggest mistake of his life, and now any chance of an alliance with the Empire is lost forever. What do we do now? Asked Guy, feeling his body still sore after his defeat in the tournament. We can only wait and see what happens to us. Sasuke has always tried to assassinate the Emperor. In the elemental nations, if someone tries to assassinate a daimyo, he will be immediately executed without even a trial, said Jiraiya with a sigh, making them worry. Rock Lee looked around. Do you think Naruto would have us executed? Jiraiya shook his head. Hard to say. Since it was Sasuke who tried to assassinate him, he could only execute him and let us go. Sakura gasped in shock, but Sasuke is the last Uchiha of Konoha. He can't kill him. And look where the last Uchiha took us, scoffed Neji while sitting at the center of his cell. His pride and thirst for power have ruined any chance for Konoha to recover from the crisis. Now we can only wait for our fate. Sakura looked in the direction of his voice. It's Naruto's fault. He should have simply accepted the alliance as soon as we proposed it to him. When Jiraiya was about to answer her, they heard a door open, and shortly after, Itachi Uchiha was in front of them. You have been summoned by the Emperor. And at his side appeared several ninjas dressed in black who handcuffed all the shinobi from Konoha, apart from Sasuke as he wasn't with them, with special handcuffs made to suppress their chakra. Without another word, they were all led into the throne room, and along the way they saw several knights who shot them disgusted looks. Once inside the hall, they were forced to their knees as Naruto and the empresses sat on their thrones, and all of them were in a particularly bad mood. Jiraiya, what a pleasure to see you again. Did you enjoy your stay in the dungeons of the castle? Said Naruto with a cold smile. I hope the decor was to your taste. I made it as similar as possible to the inside of your heads. Naruto, listen, I know Sasake made a big mistake, but. Big mistake? Repeated Minerva with a raised eyebrow. Big mistake doesn't even come close to how serious his actions have been. Your Uchiha attempted to assassinate the Emperor in front of an entire arena. A big mistake would have been disrespecting him or insulting him, not trying to take his life. On top of that, he also disrespected an empress and attempted to kill her multiple times during their match. Added Artoria, glaring at them. That mongrel crossed the line over and over again within minutes. Harabel was the next to speak, not to mention that he has not even understood his mistake. Since he regained consciousness, he has done nothing but scream, insult us all, and rant about his elite status and that everything must be his, and he even has the nerve to say we should have his kids, not Naruto's. Someone like him should be put down like a mad beast. Not even the cruelest demons have so much darkness in their minds. That pathetic Uchiha has no way of being saved. I'm sure if we let him go he would try again to murder my husband or me for defeating him. Concluded Marolona with narrowed eyes. Many wars have arisen for far less than an assassination attempt. With each word, Jiraiya could only understand how big Sasake's mistake had been. It was even possible that the Empire would declare war on Konoha for this affront. That said, I am no evil emperor and am ready to let you go home without any consequence, said Naruto, with the shinobi of Konoha looking at him with shocked and hopeful eyes. Smiling, Naruto looked at his right. Now, my trusty treasurer, how much do you think we should charge for forgetting an attempted murder in my life? Looking in the same direction, Jiraiya could only turn pale to see a tall man with green and red eyes wearing a red robe and a white mask covering his face. Given past events, I would say at least 15 chests full of gold could be enough to forget what happened, said Kakuzu, former member of the Akatsuki and treasurer of the Empire, with a hidden grin while looking at Jiraiya and the others. How is it possible? Why is Kakuzu here? I thought only Itachi had joined Naruto. Thought Jiraiya with shocked eyes. Don't tell me the reason the Akatsuki has been silent all this time is. Looks like you finally understand, Jiraiya. Almost all Akatsuki members are loyal members of the Empire now, having found a place to fulfill their most hidden desires, said Naruto, shocking them all. And since I trust Kakuzu's judgment as far as money is concerned, with 15 gold chests, I'll forget everything that happened today. Jiraiya paled at his words. But Naruto, 15 chests full of gold would risk bankrupting the village. Naruto released a sigh while shaking his head. Ah, to think that Konoha has fallen so low. Very well, if you cannot pay with the 15 chests, I propose another payment, which I am sure you will be able to deliver to me. Hearing those words, Jiraiya nodded, hoping to be able to resolve the matter quickly. What do you want in place of that gold? My inheritance. Both Jiraiya and Kakashi turned pale. I want everything that is rightfully mine. In Konoha there is the house of my parents, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, and inside there are weapons, jutsu, money and much more that belong to me. I want all of this to be delivered to me without any interference. And Naruto, I know you are right, but there are special seals around your parents' house. Save any excuses. I know you have tried several times to deactivate those seals to obtain the contents of that house, said Naruto while glaring at him. I will send a caravan with an emissary who will recover my inheritance in my name and bring it to me. Now out of my sight, go back to your village and let everyone know what will happen. I hope there will be no Jiraiya complications, or it will end very badly for Konoha. Jiraiya nodded before looking around. What about Sasake? He'll remain here as a prisoner, of course. I'll release him only when I get my inheritance. My emissary will arrive in Konoha a week from now, said Naruto with a shrug, before motioning his men to take the prisoners away. When they were out of the hall, Artoria turned to her husband. Do you think they will try something? Of course they will. They will guess that my emissary can deactivate the seals that protect my parents' house, and like sharks attracted by blood, they will do everything in their power to steal the treasures inside it, said Naruto with a growl before grinning at her, and that's why I'm sending a very special caravan for the occasion. Several hours later, Jiraiya and the rest of his team minus Sasake were racing from the land of spring back to Konoha. They were not welcome in those lands and, despite the injuries of some of them, they had to be quick to get home so as to warn Tsunade and everyone else. When it began to rain with a lot of intensity, they realized that they were back in the land of fire, and within a couple of hours, the walls of Konoha became visible in the midst of that perennial downpour. Once they got to the gates, Jiraiya ordered everyone to go to rest or to the hospital while he, Guy and Kakashi would go to report, and seconds later, and Anbu warned them that the council had already met and was waiting for them. We might as well go and give them the bad news right now, sighed Jiraiya before disappearing with a body flicker technique in a puff of smoke with the two Jonin. A few seconds later, the three shinobi reappeared in front of the doors of the council hall and entered without wasting time, seeing everyone already seated in their seats. Report, Danzo said, immediately receiving a glare from Tsunade. Mission failed. Both of them, said Jiraiya with a sigh, and predictably, the civilian side of the council exploded in a chorus of protest and indignation, while the shinobi side frowned, clearly not content with that. The clan heads remained silent, waiting for Jiraiya to better explain what had happened. What happened, Jiraiya? Asked Homura with the frown still on his face. You had clear instructions to win the tournament and get an alliance with the Empire. Naruto happened, said Kakashi while looking at them. He is the Emperor of the Alvarez Empire. As Tsunade and the clan heads looked at him with startled eyes, the civilian side of the council exploded once again with screams of indignation, anger and disbelief. He's alive, repeated Tsunade with terror in her eyes and a smile on her face. Naruto is alive. Alive and loved by everyone. Gaki has the support of the whole empire apparently. When the civilians were about to scream once more, Tsunade sent them a wave of killing intent and silenced them all before looking at Jiraiya. Tell us everything from the start. As requested, we arrived in the Empire to participate in the tournament and ask the Emperor for an audience for a possible alliance. Unfortunately, despite our cover, we were spotted right away as soon as we arrived, and before a fight could break out, we were rescued by Itachi Uchiha. Itachi Uchiha? Asked a fat merchant. He's in the Empire. He's not the only one. Apparently almost all Akatsuki members have moved to the Empire and are now all loyal subjects of the Emperor. Explained Jiraiya with a grim look. Itachi guided us to the Emperor's castle where we met 3 of the 4 Empresses and the Emperor. Naruto precisely. How is it possible that the demon is the Emperor? It must be a trick. Shouted someone from the civilian side. We should send someone right away to catch him and bring him here to be executed. Yeah, good luck with that, scoffed Jiraiya. Like we said, he is loved by the Empire and his wives, as well as being well protected. It would be easier to conquer Iwa and Kumo by sending only genin to fight. If Naruto Uzumaki is indeed the Emperor, then we can easily gain control of the Empire, said Danzo with a matter-of-fact voice. We just have to inform the daimyo, void the exile decree and reintegrate him into our shinobi force. That way he will be forced to return to Konoha and hand over control of the Empire to us. And while Homura, Kaharu and the various members of the civilian side nodded with conviction, Tsunade and the clan heads looked at him as if he were mad. Troublesome. It will never work, said Shikaku Naro with only one eye open. You have gone to great lengths to ban Naruto unfairly, and now you expect him to come back here like a good dog and hand over the empire he now leads to us. He must, because we order him. If he doesn't, he'll be executed. Are you all dumb other than greedy? Shouted Sume Inuzuka, glaring at the other side. The pup will never come back here after what you did, and you must remember that Konoha now needs the empire if we are to survive. If he wanted to show us the middle finger and leave us to die, he would have the full right to do so. Execute him. Don't make me laugh. You are more likely to die at the hands of him. Enough. Tsunade slammed a fist on the desk to bring order back to the room. While she agreed with Sume, she couldn't keep them going because otherwise they would never have come to the end of Jiraiya's relationship. Looking at her former teammate, she nodded. Please, continue. As I was saying, we met Naruto and 3 of his wives. We explained to him the reason for our presence, and it is obvious that he has spies in the village or a way to get information because he knew exactly everything about our current situation. When it came time to talk about the alliance, he showed no interest in allying with us. And the Sharingan also lost political weight the moment we discovered Itachi was a member of the Empire. Neji Hyuga tried to offer the Byakugan, but even then Naruto refused the offer, stating that in case he or someone influential in the Empire married a Hyuga, the elders of the clan or the council would do anything to keep the progeny here in Konoha. Said Jiraiya with Hiashi Hyuga nodding with a sigh, since while he was against using the caged bird seal, the elders were traditionalists and would certainly apply the seal to the babies in case they failed to keep them in the village. Then Naruto offered us a deal. If we had won the tournament, we would also have won an alliance with the Empire as well as the chests full of gold. Continued Jiraiya with the merchants salivating at the idea of winning all that gold, but everyone else already knew how it had turned out. With this change of plans, everyone except Sakura Haruno and I signed up for the tournament, as competitors from outside the Empire's borders needed a representative, and we wanted to make sure that the doctors of the Empire had not tried something in case of the injuries to our shinobi. On the day of the tournament we showed up at the arena and found out that Naruto has 5 children. What? The demon has offspring. Now there are more Kyuubi in the Empire. While the members of the civilian side of the council bellowed like hungry dogs, Danzo narrowed his gaze, immediately starting to devise a plan to be able to kidnap Naruto's children and use them for his purposes, turning them into weapons under his control or using them as a bargaining chip with the Empire. I have not been able to ascertain the presence of the Kyuubi's chakra in them, but they are 2 girls and 2 boys, from 1 year to 3 years of age. Each child is the son of one of the empresses. Explained the Sannin with shrug. The 5th child is a girl, but she is most likely adopted as she is much older than the others, around 15 or 16 years of age. She was one of the participants in the tournament and is the one who defeated Sai. How bad did it go? Asked Tsunade, although she was still surprised to learn that Naruto had children, 5 children to be exact. On a scale of 1 to 10. 11. Replied Jiraiya with serious eyes. 16 contestants, including 7 Konoha shinobi. With these numbers we should have had a good chance of winning, but unfortunately for us, the Empire is full of monsters at the level of a cage. All of our fighters were defeated within minutes, including Guy, Kakashi and Sasake. Sai even lost an arm. Impossible. Homura slammed a hand on the desk while looking at Guy and Kakashi. 3 of our best ninjas defeated that easily. How could this happen? I faced an old martial arts master, and despite opening several gates, I couldn't even touch him. Said Guy while recalling his fight with Netero Isaac. He completely beat me with a technique I had never seen before. This technique. Kakashi, were you able to copy it? Asked Danzo, only to frown when Kakashi shook his head. I tried this several times, but I couldn't copy any techniques. None of the fighters used chakra, and their movements were so fast that neither Sasake nor I could follow them. The one who defeated me was a man who fought using only lightning and electricity, and even ate the chakra produced by my Reikiri. Speaking of Sasake, said Kaharu while looking at the empty seat of the Uchiha clan, where's he? Yeah, about that. Jiraiya scratched the back of his head. He was the last to fight and lose to the 4th Empress before, attempting to assassinate Naruto in broad daylight in front of an arena full of people. Tsunade widened her eyes in shock. What? Naruto reacted quickly and used the fox's chakra to fend off Sasake before one of the empresses ordered the arrest of Sasake and all of Konoha's shinobi. Continued Jiraiya with the others looking at him with angry and shocked eyes. Eventually we were all taken to the dungeons of the castle before being dragged in front of Naruto and the empresses. We have discovered that Kakuzu, a member of the Akatsuki, is now the treasurer of the Empire and, under his advice, Naruto has demanded 15 chests full of gold to repay the insult he suffered with an assassination attempt. What? 15 chests? That's almost all the money we have. Who does he think he is to demand this? He's only a demon brat. Shut up, all of you, shouted Tsunade, making them tremble in fear. I'm sick of your complaints. If you interrupt this report again, I will have you executed here and now, and I will be the executioner myself. When they all nodded in fear, she motioned for Jiraiya to continue. As someone just pointed out to me, 15 chests full of gold would risk bankrupting the village, and I told Naruto this, so he proposed an alternative. He looked at Tsunade, and the woman realized that the alternative would not please her at all. He wants all of his inheritance. Everything that his parents owned, and that is rightfully his. Absolutely not. Homura stood up with an indignant face. Although he is apparently the son of the Yondaime Hokage, all knowledge of Minato and Kushina Uzumaki belongs to Konoha. Since the upper echelons now knew perfectly well about Naruto's parents, even if some of them denied all this thinking it was just a lie, they were aware of what he was entitled to, being part of a clan and born within a marriage. However, they also knew that the two famous ninja had amassed many riches, weapons, jutsu and knowledge about seals inside their home, but no one had ever managed to get past the seals placed in defense of the mansion. Jiraiya had tried to override them but without success, and even Tsunade had tried secretly, but even though she was partly Uzumaki, the seals had not reacted to her blood, and therefore the house of Minato Namikaze had been sealed since the fateful night when he lost his life. Naruto wants his inheritance, and Sasake is currently still in the Empire as a prisoner. In about a week, a convoy with an emissary from the Empire will arrive here to recover whatever he can. Sasake will only be released when Naruto gets what he wants. Continued Jiraiya with a sigh. It is clear that he will prepare a key seal to overcome the seals of the mansion, or perhaps the emissary will be able to remove them. How dare he keep Uchiha-sama in prison? He belongs to a noble clan of Konoha. He cannot be treated as a mere thief. Jiraiya looked at the merchant who had just spoken. Unfortunately, in the Empire they have different rules, and for them the name Uchiha does not mean anything. Either we let Naruto take what he wants, or we won't see the last Uchiha ever again. We should send Anbu to rescue Sasake. A small elite team, said Homura while looking at Danzo, who nodded at him, but Tsunade glared at both of them. Out of the question. We are already in a difficult situation because of that brat. I will not send my shinobi to save his and risk causing another political incident with the Empire. A little time in jail will do him good. But Hokage-sama, I said no. Now, get out of here. All of you. And within moments she was left alone in the room with Jiraiya. I hate these meetings. I'm almost tempted to leave this village too. What are we going to do, Tsunade? Asked Jiraiya while looking at his former teammate. There may be resources inside Minato and Kushina's house that can help Konoha get back on its feet. Tsunade looked at him with confused eyes. What do you mean? Of course we won't do anything. Everything in that house rightfully belongs to Naruto. You can't be serious, Tsunade. He slammed a hand on the desk between them. Konoha is on the verge of ruin, and those knowledge and money could help the whole village. Don't you care about your home? The Godime Hokage narrowed her eyes. This place stopped being my home the moment you all lined up against Naruto. I wasn't kidding when I said I'm tempted to get out of this hell. She grabbed him by the collar of his clothes. When the emissary arrives, I will accompany them to Minato's house and let them take whatever Naruto is entitled to. Should you or anyone else try to stop them and the situation worsens, I swear on the name of my grandfather and my great-uncle that I will kill everyone responsible with my bare hands. Jiraiya glared at her before walking away. I hope you know you are making a big mistake, Tsunade. When she was completely alone, Tsunade slumped back in her chair. No, Jiraiya, it is you who have made a big mistake, and it is right that you pay the consequences. She didn't know how, but Tsunade was sure that something would happen the day the caravan arrived with the emissary. If I had to bet, I'd bet everything on a plot of Danzo, and for once I really hope to lose the bet. The last thing they needed was the Empire as an enemy. Word of the defeat of the shinobi of Konoha in the tournament spread like wildfire throughout the village, and soon everyone was aware of Naruto, his progeny and the fate of Sasake Uchiha. Before long, everyone started blaming Naruto for what happened and even called him a traitor to the village for not returning to help Konoha in its time of need. Tsunade couldn't be more disgusted than that, but she couldn't think about it too much now, as a week had passed and in the distance, in the midst of the incessant storm, she saw a caravan advancing towards the village. The emissary had arrived. True enough, in the midst of all that wind and rain, Tsunade could see in the distance a long line of people advancing along the main road. She was currently standing under one of the large gazebos that had been installed throughout the village, safe points to stay out of the rain thanks to simple seals placed on the ground that prevented wind or rain from passing. Now, if only Jiraiya were able to create something even more useful against that perennial storm, it wouldn't hurt. The idea of a seal that could chase away those clouds was very tempting but almost impossible to create. Tsunade knew that Jiraiya was the best regarding seals in the village, and if he couldn't, it was virtually impossible for anyone else to make it, in the village at least. Tsunade put certain thoughts aside as the group of people from the Empire was getting closer and she didn't want to look bad. Turning to the 4 Anbu of her personal team, she looked at them with stern eyes. Is everything ready? I don't want nasty surprises. The road to the Namikaze mansion has been brought under control, Hokage-sama, said an Anbu with long purple hair. Teams of Anbu and Jonin are currently stationed along the way to avoid problems. Good. I want this situation to be resolved as soon as possible. An Anbu with a boar mask looked at Tsunade for a moment. Permission to speak freely, Hokage-sama. Granted. Why is the Emperor, doing all of this? According to the reports, among his ranks there are warriors and monsters of the highest level, including Itachi Uchiha. He could just have sent someone here and recovered his legacy without anyone noticing, said the Anbu, and the others had to admit that it was a good question. Because he can, replied Tsunade after a long sigh. He is the Emperor and yet he never did anything to get in touch with us. We are of no use to him, while we need him, and he probably knew that eventually we would go and ask for his help. I wouldn't be surprised if he has already foreseen everything up to Sasake's attempted assassination, and now he can come here, as if the village belonged to him, and he would be perfectly on the side of reason. Even the daimyo would not dare to oppose him once he knew the truth. The 4 Anbu could not help but accept that reasoning. Their daimyo was far from reliable or suited to his task, but even someone like him knew it would be foolish to openly oppose the Empire, especially when Naruto could count on the power of the Kyuubi and who knows how many warriors with superhuman abilities. Now get ready, they are coming, said Tsunade, as the convoy was now a few tens of meters from the castle. From what Tsunade could see, there were about 100 people, the bulk of which were divided into 5 columns. The outermost ones were composed of 25 knights, protected by thick armor as well as their steeds. Then there were 2 other columns made up of 25-foot soldiers, armed with spears and shields, with bronze-colored armor. Finally there was a single column of what Tsunade could think were ninjas, given their all-black attire and with only their eyes visible. However, it was the small group leading the march that caught the Hokage's attention the most. There were 7 people, each one different from the other, starting with what looked like a little boy or kid who was advancing while lying on what looked like a large flying cushion. At her side was a young girl with brown hair tied back in 2 twin tails who had a large war hammer leaning against her shoulder, and was chatting with a blonde, green-eyed boy, much shorter than her, who seemed to have a sword sheathed on his back. Then there was a man with short silver hair dressed in red leather clothes and visible studs on both his jacket and trousers. In front of him there was a young dark-haired woman, and Tsunade couldn't tell if she was currently undressed or dressed as most of her skin was on display, and so was the green-haired woman beside her, who wore a simple bikini with a coat that did nothing to hide her ample curves. Please, don't tell me Naruto became a pervert and ordered women to dress outrageously, thought Tsunade, having a sudden desire to punch Jiraiya. Focusing on the one leading all the others, she couldn't help but shiver. He was a young man with short white hair, dressed in black with a sheathed katana clutched in his left hand, and his blue eyes seemed to see right through her. Finally, the large group of people stopped just 2 meters from Tsunade, who bowed her head in greeting, after noticing a rather strange detail. None of them were wet despite the constant downpour with which they had arrived, and, now that she looked better, it wasn't raining around them. Greetings, I'm Tsunade Senju, the Godime Hokage. I take it you are the ambassadors sent by the Emperor. That is correct, said the swordsman leading the others, looking at her with those cold eyes before briefly observing the village behind her. I am Virgil, son of Sparta, commander of the 10 Commandments, Emperor Naruto's personal guard, and current acting leader of this delegation. The woman with green hair tilted her head while looking at Tsunade with bored eyes. Brandish Mew, member of the Spriggan 12, the personal guard of the second Empress Minerva. Sup. I'm Meliodas, leader of the 7 deadly sins and second seat of the 10 Commandments. Name's Ban. I'm also a member of the 7 deadly sins. Do you happen to have some good alcohol here? The girl with the hammer waved at them. Hello, I'm Diane of the 7 deadly sins. King. Same group as them, said the young kid while still laying on his pillow. The last to introduce herself was the dark-haired woman, who seemed amused by something. Merlin, member of the 7 deadly sins like the others. A pleasure, said Tsunade, while her mind was working as fast as it could to catalog all the information it had just received. The day after Jiraiya and the others returned from the Empire, Tsunade had summoned them for a more detailed report and had therefore known that at least 2 of the empresses had a personal guard, but it was by now obvious that both Naruto and his 4 wives had elite guards ready to defend them. Currently she knew the names of 4 personal guards, only the group defending the 4th Empress was still unknown, yet these 7 deadly sins had not introduced themselves as part of her personal guard. What exactly are the 7 deadly sins, if you don't mind me asking? We are simply a group made up of members of different races. We have fought alongside the Emperor practically since he set foot on his first battlefield, explained Merlin with the smile still on her face. Tsunade looked at Virgil and Brandish for a moment. There are only 5 of you here. The others are busy with something else. I see. Gesturing toward the village, Tsunade motioned them to follow her. This way please, I'll guide you toward the Namikaze mansion. But after a few steps she stopped, realizing that it was no longer raining around her and that the temperature was more than pleasant. It was still spring despite the perennial rain. I imagine it can be annoying walking in the rain, said Merlin walking at her side. Take it as a small favor, for not openly opposing Naruto when he was still a ninja in your village. Tsunade didn't know what to answer, as she was still amazed at how that woman, since it was obviously her doing, was able to create a dry area without any apparent effort. Walking back along the streets of the village, with several Anbu by their side and on the roofs of the houses, Tsunade immediately noticed how many of the villagers were observing the Empire's emissaries with hatred and envy, some from the windows of their homes and some on the street. There were even some shinobi among them, and this did nothing but worry Tsunade, who was more and more convinced that something was about to happen. The further into the village they went, the more people seemed to flock along the road, forming small crowds, and as he feared, the situation had further aggravated their mentality, and the breaking point came when someone yelled, "Demon lovers! Begone from Konoha!" And a small rock hit Ban right on the forehead, opening a wound from which a little blood came out. Tsunade stopped instantly, turning like everyone towards the source of the voice, only to find a barely 10-year-old boy with his arms still outstretched after throwing the stone, and while the other villagers were looking at him with looks somewhere between admiration and surprise, Virgil and the others were staring at him impassively. Ban ran a hand across his forehead to remove the blood, showing his forehead free from any kind of wound, before reaching down and picking up the stone that had hit him. Looking then in the direction of the child, he could only show a toothy smile. "You drop this." The next instant, a large hole opened in the wall behind the boy, as well as the walls behind the first. Tsunade could only widen her eyes in her shock as she could barely see the movement of Ban's arm as he was about to throw the stone. In everyone else's eyes, The stone had simply disappeared from Ban's hand, and after glancing behind him, the kid couldn't hold his bladder before falling to the ground with terrified eyes on Ban and the others. The villagers know how to show respect, I see, said Virgil with a voice so cold that Tsunade thought for a moment he was a member of the Yuki clan. I am extremely sorry for what happened, please forgive him. He's just a child, said the Hokage while bowing her head. Ban merely waved one hand. It's fine, that didn't hurt at all. Mentally cursing the stupidity of that child, and of his parents, Tsunade resumed leading the emissaries of the Empire for a few minutes before arriving in front of the Namikaze mansion. It was nothing exaggerated, being a simple two-story villa with a large garden and a small pond in the center of it, surrounded by stone walls with a single large wooden door as the only method of entry. Waiting for them there were Jiraiya together with other shinobi arranged on the roofs of the surrounding houses and along the road to drive away the curious civilians, and Tsunade could immediately see from her former teammates' look that he didn't approve of her choice. This one, said Tsunade, motioning toward the mansion, everything that belongs to Naruto's parents is in here. Jiraiya walked toward them and, after staring with a perverted smile at Brandish and Merlin's bodies, asked, so how are you going to remove the security seals? Did Naruto give you a key or something? That doesn't concern you, replied Virgil with a scowl, before looking at his side, Brandish. Brandish said nothing, just walked up to the wooden door, and when she was close enough an intricate pattern of seals became visible to all. Those seals were among Minato and Kushina's best creations, as they created a complete sphere around their home, thus preventing anyone from entering from underground or from the sky. They also prevented what was inside the sphere from deteriorating or aging, such as furniture, plants and food. As such, they had immediately attracted the interest of many shinobi, including Danzo who wanted them for himself, but with Minato's death, the secret of their creation was lost. Brandish placed a hand on those seals and, under the shocked gaze of everyone present, the seals began to get smaller and smaller until they vanished beneath the palm of her hand. In a matter of seconds, one of Minato Namikaze's most intricate and powerful works was destroyed with a single touch, but Brandish didn't seem to give any weight to her actions and, with a simple push, opened the door. There. It's open now. Tsunade gaped at her, her mind completely blown away by what she just saw, but just when she was about to ask how she did it, a scream ripped through the air attracting the attention of everyone present, and it only took a moment to see an Anbu who had just driven a kunai into the base of the neck of a bronze soldier. That was the signal that gave the green light to total chaos, and in a matter of seconds, several shinobi from Konoha rushed at the soldiers of the Empire, managing to catch some of them off guard. What the hell are you doing? Shouted Tsunade with all her strength, her eyes full of rage aimed at her own shinobi who were attacking against her orders. Stop this at once. All of you. However, none of the various ninja listened to her and continued to fight against the forces of the Empire who had organized quickly to repel the attackers. Gritting her teeth in anger, Tsunade ordered her Anbu and the remaining shinobi, who still seemed to be listening to her, to stop all those who didn't obey her orders, before moving to do her own bidding. Meanwhile, some shinobi leapt over the wall of the mansion, but attracted Merlin's attention. Captain. Yes, I saw them. I'll leave the rest to you, said Meliodas before rushing inside the Namikaze's house. Die demon lover, shouted an Anbu jumping at her with his tanto ready to strike, only to be pierced by several small kunai-like spears and turned into minced meat. Looking to her right, Merlin saw King fly towards her with a bored look. We can defend ourselves freely, right? But of course, smiled Merlin, moving her right hand to fire several beams of energy that hit enemy shinobi, incinerating each one of them. They attacked us first, after all. King nodded before taking to the air and using his sacred treasure, striking several enemies at once, either killing them immediately or wounding them enough to take them out while letting the others kill them. A few shinobi tried to strike him using several jutsu, but all the small spears that made up his weapon quickly moved to protect him before raining down on those who had attacked him, reducing them to mere red spots on the roofs of the houses. Merlin took to the air as well and began firing more energy beams, oblivious to how those still alive were terrified or horrified by her attacks, which reduced victims to ashes in moments. Honestly, they were supposed to be shinobi, yet it took so little to shock them. Merlin was now certain that people like Itachi Hayabusa, formerly Uchiha, were gems hidden in the middle of a pile of rocks. A strong tremor attracted the attention of many of those present as two Anbu, belonging to the Akamichi clan, grew enormous so that they could quickly crush their opponents, as the famine of recent years had severely depleted their food reserves, the source of their strength. Imagine their surprise when, before them, Diane instantly grew until she was a little less tall than them, holding her massive war hammer like a twig. The two Akamichi didn't hesitate to try to punch her, but Diane blocked both shots with the shaft of her weapon before pushing them back, destroying part of the road. Before they could recover, she hit both of them with her weapon, managing to send them flying, and, thankfully, they returned to their normal size before crashing into two houses, blowing holes in the ceilings. Slamming her weapon on the ground, she looked at the damaged road. Even though Naruto told me about them, I didn't think these ninjas could get bigger than me. She then slapped away a couple of ninja who had tried to stab their weapons in her leg, sending them on the ground, breaking several of their bones. Right near where they had crashed, Ban was moving with ease among several enemies, using his 4-section staff to strike them in vital points or using his magic to rip the hearts out of their chests, then dropping them to the ground. Just after smashing a Chunin's skull, he turned in time to have an Anbu pierce his heart with his sword, but instead of screaming in pain, he spat out some blood and looked at his enemy with a grin. That hurts, you know that. The Anbu stepped back, surprised by the albino's reaction, but Ban grabbed him by the throat, easily lifting him off the ground. What are you? Oh, that's easy, I'm immortal. Snap. Throwing aside the corpse of the man whose neck he had just broken, Ban turned towards the mansion and saw that 3 ninjas had managed to get through the wall of knights and bronze soldiers, heading towards Brandish, who still hadn't moved since she opened the door. The woman saw them coming and, without flinching, threw 3 pebbles at them. The 3 ninja grinned, convinced that she was not a fighter, but in the blink of an eye the 3 pebbles became boulders and none of them had the opportunity to avoid them, thus being smashed and killed. Sighing, Brandish went back to watching the rest of the fights. Why am I here? Virgil could have just cut those seals with his katana. Speaking of Virgil, the son of Sparta was spreading death like no other. No one could see him for more than a second before he disappeared, reducing the closest enemy to a pile of chunks of flesh. After decapitating 3 Anbu with a single slash, he moved beside Tsunade, staring at her with a disapproving look. Has this place sunk so low that you'd even try to kill ambassadors from the Empire? Wait, Virgil, I swear this was not my idea, said Tsunade after knocking out 2 Jonin. I would never do such a thing. Therefore your subordinates act against you and do not listen to you. Virgil shook his head before moving away. Killing another shinobi, we will have words about this. Tsunade could only curse yet again whoever set this up, and she also had half an idea who was responsible. Inside the mansion, the infiltrated Anbu group was assiduously searching for any scroll or weapon that might come in handy, search from top to bottom. Danzo-sama wants it all recovered and handed over to him. Oh, so that's the name of your boss. All the ninjas turned towards the entrance, where Meliodas was looking at them with a smirk on his face. Naruto told me that creepy guy was going to try something. I guess I have to offer him a free meal at my tavern when I get home. You won't do anything because you'll die here. Kill him, shouted one of the Anbu before hurling a ball of fire at him, mimicked by his comrades, but when the flaming bullets were close to hitting Meliodas, he drew his sword with disarming speed. Counter vanish. With a single slash, he completely cancelled the incoming attacks, shocking his opponents. You know that this is Naruto's house, right? I don't want anything to happen in here, said Meliodas with a serious look on his face. The Anbu drew their swords, ready to face him hand to hand, but he shook his head and within seconds an unnatural and terrifying pressure began to crush them as the boy's eyes became 2 pools of darkness. A strange mark began to form on his forehead, and some of the Anbu immediately thought of Orochimaru's cursed seal, as his lips curled up in a cruel grin. You've always thought of Naruto as a demon, haven't you? He took a step forward and the Anbu backed away from him. In that case, let me show what a real demon can do. When even the last shinobi was finally stopped, Tsunade looked around and could only feel shame. At least 50 of her ninja had died in that futile battle, with another 30 immobilized by her, Jiraiya, and the few ninja who still obeyed her without question. On the other hand, 8 bronze soldiers, a knight and 2 shinobi of the Empire had perished, and all of them had died in the first minutes of the fight, then had organized themselves and had begun to push back their assailants, mostly thanks to Virgil and the others, who had killed most of their enemies. Heads are going to roll for this, thought Tsunade with an angry scowl. She already had a clear idea of who was behind it, and while she hated having anyone behind her back, sending so many ninjas to their deaths was way over the line. Seeing Virgil walk towards her, with a terrifyingly cold gaze, she prepared to contain the damage to the best of her ability. On behalf of all of Konoha, I am truly sorry for what happened. It wasn't my intention at all for it to end like this, but I already know who the culprits might be. If you would just give me a few hours for. Virgil raised a hand to stop her. Spare it. It is now clear that this village is a dying beast, with multiple heads intent on biting each other rather than trying to survive. I want to talk to the rulers of this place right now, all of them. Normally Tsunade would have been angry since she was the leader of the village, but by now she knew that no one thought so, and even the emissaries of the Empire had noticed this detail. Sighing, she nodded and summoned a shinobi to her, ordering him to convene the council with absolute urgency. When the Chunin left to carry out the orders, Virgil had already gone to his companions, while their dead comrades were placed in special storage scrolls, and some of the Empire's shinobi started entering the Namikaze residence to reclaim Naruto's inheritance. This isn't going to end well. Sometimes Tsunade hated being right. Immediately after sending one of her shinobi to summon the council members, she herself had headed for the Hokage Tower together with Jiraiya and his Anbu, and Virgil and Merlin had also come with them, stating that the others would stand guard against more backstabbing actions from Konoha. Again, Tsunade couldn't argue against his words. While what had taken place would undoubtedly cast further mud on the village's reputation, Tsunade was feeling further anger and shame since she had convened the council 20 minutes ago, and, while the clan heads had arrived practically immediately, the members of the civilian side had arrived calmly and without seeming sorry about it, all the while the 3 fossils posing as her advisors had not yet arrived. Finally, the chamber's door was opened and the 3 latecomers entered, trying to appear as if they were gods on earth, but it was clear that, judging by Virgil's annoyed look and Merlin's amused smile, they were only making themselves ridiculous. Sitting down in their seats, and getting a glare from Tsunade in the process, the 3 old shinobi closely watched their 2 guests, and Tsunade could swear she saw new wrinkles appearing on their decrepit faces when neither Virgil nor Merlin showed any form of respect towards them. What did you want to discuss, Tsunade? Why so much urgency? Asked Homura in a voice that exuded lies with every word. Virgil didn't even give Tsunade time to open her mouth. Your shinobi have attacked us and killed members of the Empire's delegation. We want immediate compensation for the damage and the affront suffered. We demand a chest full of gold per emissary killed by your shinobi. The civilian side of the council immediately erupted with howls of protest, but a simple glance from Virgil was enough to silence them immediately. Kaharu looked at the 2 emissaries with disapproving eyes. Those were scum, traitorous ninja from the village. We did not organize that attack and therefore we cannot be held responsible for what happened. Stop talking nonsense. So many traitors in the village and no one noticed? Asked Virgil, looking at them as if they were stupid. You'd better pay before things get any worse for you. We won't pay a dime for a demon lover, shouted a merchant from the civilian side. I bet you were the one who instigated the attack. You killed some village shinobi, you should pay us. Merlin. On it. With a snap of her fingers, all members of the civilian side vanished into thin air, shocking everyone else in the room. What happened to them? Asked Jiraiya, unable to help but connect what happened to a space-time seal, the ones used by Minato when he was alive. Oh, I just teleported them to the middle of the lake not too far from here, said Merlin with the smile still on her face. A good swim should clear their heads, and now it's much quieter here. Making a mental note to ask Merlin if she could teach her that trick, Tsunade sighed before looking at Virgil. I understand that the damage suffered is huge, but 11 gold chests would risk bankrupting us. That's not my problem. Whoever organized all this had to think about the consequences first, said Virgil, casting a glare at Danzo, who scowled back at him. The swordsman then looked back at the Hokage. However, if you are not going to compensate us, you simply need to be motivated. He then nodded at Merlin. Do it. She nodded back before closing her eyes for a moment. Done. What? Homura looked at her with confused eyes. What are you talking about? What have you done? Merlin merely smiled at him. I simply told a dear friend to motivate you properly. Then, all of a sudden, the temperature in the room went up. A few minutes before, Sasake couldn't believe what was happening to him. Him, an elite of the Uchiha clan, reduced to a mere prisoner and bargaining chip. Him. Not only had he been humiliated by that damned bitch, but Naruto and his useless minions had also had the gall to imprison him. He would make them pay, from the first man to the last. He'd kill Naruto, take the empire for himself, and then let those bitches know who the real elite was. Looking up, he glared at one of his captors, a ridiculously pink-haired boy, or maybe girl, with yellow eyes. When he woke up, Sasake was immediately aware of the heavy handcuffs around his ankles and wrists, as well as the leather strap around his mouth that prevented him from speaking. The Uchiha immediately tried to free himself, but those handcuffs had sealed his chakra and he couldn't do anything about it. At one point a team of 4 Anbu had found him, but that pink-haired guy had immediately put them all to sleep with some strange energy arrows, and the 4 idiots were still there on the ground. Besides him, there was also a wiry orange-haired man with a ridiculous mustache, and he too had an arrow stuck in the base of his neck, yet he wasn't dead but simply asleep. The idea of being monitored by people like that was driving him mad, more than it should have. Especially since the rain hadn't stopped for a second, yet those two seemed immune to it, not even a drop fell around them. An elite like him didn't deserve to be left to rot like a stray dog. Then, at one point, the guy with the pink hair raised his head and after nodding he snapped his fingers, dispersing the arrow at the base of his partner's neck. That was the moment Sasake realized that there was a reason this guy had been put to sleep. Under his shocked eyes, the wiry man began to grow bigger and more muscular, eventually becoming a behemoth easily taller than anyone else in the village. His aura had also changed and the surrounding rain seemed to almost evaporate due to the heat emanating from his body. Turning to the pink-haired boy, he asked, Gauther, where are we? Near Konoha, Escanor, said Gauther with a calm voice. Merlin asked me to put you to sleep because she knew you wouldn't accept the idea of staying here while she went to the village with the others. Now she told me to wake you up because she has to ask you for a favor. Anything for my beloved Merlin, said Escanor with a nod, crossing his arms. What does she require of me? Well, she and the others were attacked by some Konoha ninja and, despite the surrounding heat, Sasake felt ice-cold shivers running down his back as Escanor turned to face him. Those mongrels dared to attack Merlin. Yes, it's all good now. They couldn't even touch her, but we lost some of the soldiers in the initial ambush, explained Gauther, not at all bothered by the heat. They are now agreeing compensation, but it seems that the upper echelons of the village are against our request, and therefore Merlin wants you to press them to pay. Escanor continued to glare at Sasake for a few seconds, almost reducing him to ashes with just his gaze, before turning to his companion. If she were to ask me, I could easily burn the village to ashes. Gauther simply pointed at the mountain with the faces of the 5 Hokage carved on its facade. Apparently she thinks that monument is in bad taste. Escanor looked up at the mountain and nodded, before holding up a single finger, creating a miniature sun that seemed to burn the grass below, and Sasake couldn't help but be shocked by the intensity of those flames. He had never felt anything like it. With a mighty leap, Escanor leapt into the sky before hurling that little sun against the mountain, and when it impacted against the rock, he closed his hand for an instant, pride flare. In a dazzling flash, the entire mountain was engulfed in titanic flames that melted the rock like butter, and within seconds, all that was left of the Konoha monument was a smoking crater of molten rock. Landing gracefully, but cracking the ground beneath his feet, Escanor nodded in satisfaction. This should satisfy Merlin. Meanwhile, he turned to Sasake, glaring at him. I sincerely hope your village doesn't try to attack her again, or it won't end well for you. What have you done? Screamed Kaharu with shocked eyes, looking at the crater near the Hokage Tower. She, as well as many others, were visibly sweating from the heat, and while it was better than the cold brought by the rain, the destruction of their monument was something horrific. Motivating you, said Virgil without missing a beat, either you pay us or the rest of the village will suffer the same fate. This will be seen as a declaration of war, shouted Homura, with some of the clan heads still shocked by the destruction of the mountain. No one will remain on the sidelines in front of such an act. Spare me your empty cries. No one will side with Konoha. Meanwhile, Danzo was watching Virgil intently. The destruction of the Konoha monument was a great loss but not an irreparable one, and from what he had been told, the white-haired swordsman in front of him had been the one who had eliminated the most shinobi without even breaking a sweat or taking a single blow. It was undeniable that he was a warrior far superior to many others. If he could control him, Danzo could easily conquer the other hidden villages before focusing on the empire. Discreetly, he molded some chakra in his blindfolded eye and activated the Sharingan hidden behind the blindfolds, preparing to control that monster and use it against all of his enemies. Unfortunately for him, however, Virgil was anything but controllable by a technique as weak as his own. Feeling a slight annoyance in his mind, Virgil immediately drove it away, shocking Danzo. Having easily pinpointed the source of that annoyance, Virgil glared at Danzo and with the thumb of his left hand, eased the blade of his katana slightly out of its scabbard, before immediately sheathing it again. The table, as well as Danzo's walking stick, were immediately cut down to pieces, shocking everyone present. I see Konoha is not afraid to crawl lower and lower for its own gain. Tsunade glared at Danzo. Since she was not blind, what have you done? The man didn't answer her, merely scowling at Virgil, silently cursing him since the backlash received was causing him to feel excruciating pain in his eye hidden under the bandages. It shouldn't have ended like this. Now he was also in danger of losing his secret weapon. You have 1 hour to gather the required gold, after which this village will cease to exist and your precious Uchiha will be the first to die, hissed Virgil before disappearing with Merlin, leaving Tsunade with more problems than before. With a deep sigh, Tsunade sent a shinobi to retrieve the members of the civilian side of the council. If they had to pay, she'd make sure those idiots put most of their savings into it, and she would also take a good part of the Uchiha's money, since the main fault lay with that spoiled brat. Tsunade, Jiraiya walked toward her. If we really pay what is required. I know, Jiraiya, sighed Tsunade, pinching the bridge of her nose. Konoha is doomed. Is this report accurate? Asked a chilling voice in the darkness, as 2 yellow eyes read a scroll. Yes, we had the information verified from 3 different sources. Orochimaru-sama. Sitting on his throne, the traitorous Sannin flashed a grin that would have made many battle-hardened shinobi tremble in fear. My, it seems that Naruto-kun has been busy in recent years, founding an empire, getting married, having children. I almost regret not sending him a wedding present. I absolutely have to remedy this shortcoming of mine. Kneeling in front of him, Kabuto flashed a knowing smile. What kind of gift do you have in mind, Orochimaru-sama? I have yet to decide, but forward this report to the Raikage and Tsuchikage in the meantime, said the snake Sannin with the grin still on his face. Kabuto nodded before standing up and walking out of the room to do his master's bidding. Meanwhile, an eerie laughter echoed in the air. Now Naruto-kun, I wonder how strong you've gotten. Sasake Uchiha was still his primary target as a new body, but perhaps some specimen of the empire could definitely be his thing. Starting with the emperor's children.